You may think you came here by accident. You may think you just clicked a video, scrolled the feed, drifted into this moment without intention, but I want you to pause, truly pause, and feel the weight of this instant. Because something inside you, something ancient, something unbroken, pulled you here. Not the algorithm, not coincidence, a force in you that has been whispering for years, wake up. You're not living the life you came here to live. I want you to breathe for a moment, slow, deep, deliberate, because what you're about to hear isn't entertainment and it isn't motivation in the superficial sense. This is a reminder, a message, a disturbance delivered directly to the deepest chambers of your awareness. Think of this moment as a doorway. Most people pass doorways every day and never look inside. But you stopped, you looked, and something in you recognized that you've been living in a fog so familiar you forgot it was there. Let me tell you something unsettling yet liberating most people don't think. They believe they're thinking, but really they're only rearranging pre-programmed ideas fed into their minds by culture, family, society, and fear. They obey patterns that aren't their own. They chase desires that aren't their own. And if your life feels disrupted right now, if your identity feels unstable, if your emotions feel louder than ever, then hear me clearly. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. There's a vast realm inside you, a landscape of imagination, intuition, power, and possibility that culture has taught you to ignore. They taught you to mistrust your inner voice, to silence your curiosity, to doubt your uniqueness. They taught you to be practical, realistic, obedient, and somewhere along the way you forgot that you are not here to simply survive. You are here to discover, to awaken, to remember. You feel lost because you've begun walking off the well-worn path. You feel uncertain because you're stepping into territory where the mind can't rely on old maps. But that's where real life begins, in the uncharted, in the unknown, in the places where you're forced to confront the raw power of your own consciousness. And make no mistake, your consciousness is powerful, more powerful than you've ever been allowed to believe. We live in a world that fears awakened individuals, a world that thrives when people are distracted, predictable, emotionally numb, and spiritually asleep. But the moment a person begins to ask real questions, who am I? Why am I here? What is this life? Something in the architecture of reality shifts. The system trembles because one awakened individual is more dangerous than a million obedient ones. You are beginning to see through the facade. You're beginning to sense that reality is not as solid, stable, or fixed as you once assumed. You're beginning to feel that the world is more dreamlike than you were ever told, and that your role in shaping it is far greater than you were ever allowed to understand. People say they want change, but what they really want is familiar improvement. Change means dismantling your identity. Change means releasing what no longer aligns with your becoming. Change means walking away from versions of yourself that once felt safe but now feel suffocating. Change means dying before you die, and you're in the middle of that death. That's why you feel disoriented. That's why things you once cling to no longer feel meaningful. That's why conversations, relationships, habits, routines suddenly feel hollow. You're not losing interest. You're outgrowing entire dimensions of your previous life. You might not understand this yet, but what's pulling you forward isn't motivation. It's evolution. It's the intelligence of your own soul rearranging your path. It's the force inside you that refuses to let you die without ever having lived. You were not created to be a reflection of society. You were created to be a reflection of the cosmos. Vast, mysterious, creative, unpredictable. You were born with an inner world capable of shaping the outer world. This is why you feel dissatisfied with mediocrity. This is why silence feels more real to you than noise. This is why you keep having moments where you glimpse something larger, something timeless, something that feels like truth. You're being guided, not by me, not by any voice outside yourself, but by the part of you that remembers what you came here to do. The part of you that never forgot your purpose, even when you did. The part of you that has been waiting patiently, quietly, for you to stop living as someone else's idea of who you should be. This is your awakening, not dramatic, not cosmic, not mystical, though it contains all of those energies. This is the awakening of someone who has finally decided to stop running from themselves. You are realizing that safety was a cage, that comfort was a trap, that fear was a mask, that identity was a costume. And the moment you begin removing these layers, you become something unstoppable, not because you have power over the world, but because the world no longer has power over you. You are here in this moment because some part of you is ready to confront your own truth, ready to let go of the illusions that kept you small, ready to step into the unfiltered, unedited version of your existence. You are here because the universe moves people like you at the exact moment they're prepared to transform. Listen carefully now, because I want this truth to carve itself into your awareness. The version of you that brought you here cannot be the version of you who continues the journey. You must become someone new, someone aligned, someone awake, and the awakening begins right now, in this breath, in this beating heart, in this widening awareness. It begins with the recognition that life is not happening to you, it's happening through you. You are the instrument through which consciousness experiences itself. And when you begin living from that truth, everything changes. But we're just getting started. This is only the first step of your awakening. There is much more you need to understand, much more you need to remember, much more you are about to step into. And so you stand here not by accident, but because life has been quietly preparing you for a moment like this without ever announcing what it was doing. It has been shaping you in the shadows, testing the durability of your spirit, stretching the boundaries of your mind, and revealing to you piece by piece the vast territory within yourself that you have barely begun to explore. And perhaps you've noticed it too, that subtle shift in perception, that strange feeling that something is changing inside you faster than you can explain. You sense yourself disconnecting from the noise that used to control you and slowly aligning with something deeper, something ancient, something that has been waiting for you to finally listen. Because awakening never arrives as a polite visitor. It comes like a storm, tearing away the fictions you once mistook for truth. It dissolves your old identities, your old fears, your old limits. It removes layer after layer of the stories you inherited, the illusions you carried, the beliefs you never questioned. And in that stripping away, you begin to see the architecture of your own consciousness with a clarity that is almost overwhelming. You begin to see that the world you assumed was fixed is actually fluid, that the life you thought you were trapped inside is more malleable than you ever imagined. You begin to see that the borders you placed around your own potential were never real. They were inherited, they were taught, and they can be erased. This is the turning point most people never reach, because when the mind begins to awaken, it does not offer comfort. It demands honesty, radical, unfiltered, uncompromising honesty. It forces you to confront the ghosts you've been running from, the wounds you've been ignoring, the truths you were afraid to acknowledge. And it is in this confrontation, in this internal upheaval, that the next version of you begins to form, not because you planned it, not because you forced it, but because the deeper intelligence operating within you has decided it is time to break open. You see, human beings were never meant to live small lives. We were never meant to sleepwalk through our own existence, repeating the same emotions, the same fears, the same patterns until the end. That is not what consciousness came here to do. Consciousness came here to evolve, to expand, to push against the boundaries of reality itself. And every time you resist change, every time you cling to the familiar, every time you deny the inner stirrings of transformation, You are not just holding yourself back. You are resisting the very purpose of your existence. But something inside you has already stopped resisting. Something deep within you has already stepped forward while the rest of you is still catching up. That is why you feel this restlessness, this hunger, this strange pull toward something you cannot fully describe. It is because a new self is forming inside you, and it is growing stronger every day. A self that no longer wants to be defined by old stories, a self that no longer fears the unknown, a self that is willing to walk into the fire of transformation and emerge with a clarity that cannot be taken away. The truth is, there comes a moment when the life you have outgrown becomes more painful to stay in than the uncertainty of stepping into something new. And that moment, though terrifying, is also sacred, because it marks the death of who you were and the birth of who you are becoming. And no matter how much chaos surrounds that transition, no matter how much confusion clouds it, there is always a deeper intelligence guiding the process, an intelligence that knows exactly what it is doing. You may feel lost, but you are not. You may feel confused, but you are moving in the right direction. You may feel like everything is falling apart, but in truth, everything is falling into alignment. The structures collapsing around you are not punishments. They are invitations. Invitations to step into a larger version of yourself. Invitations to shed the beliefs that kept you small. Invitations to reclaim the authority of your own consciousness. And if you observe closely, you will notice something remarkable. Each time you release an old piece of yourself, life responds. It rearranges, it opens, it expands. Because the external world is not separate from you. It is an extension of your mind, a reflection of your inner state. Change your consciousness, and the world around you must change with it. Not by magic, not by accident, but because reality itself is participatory. You are influencing it all the time, whether you realize it or not. This is why your awakening matters, not because it makes you special, but because it makes you real. It brings you back to the truth that has always lived beneath the surface of your existence, the truth that you are not just a passive observer in this universe. You are a creator, a participant, a field of consciousness capable of shaping reality in ways far beyond what you were taught to believe. And perhaps you've started to notice moments of this already, small flashes, where everything feels connected, where intuition becomes louder than logic, where you sense meaning in the chaos, where you feel guided without knowing by what. These are not coincidences. They are signals that your consciousness is expanding beyond the narrow frame it was once confined to. They are signs that you are beginning to see the world not as a rigid structure, but as a living, breathing, responsive field of possibility. As you continue to evolve, you will realize that the real transformation does not happen in dramatic moments or sudden revelations. It happens in the quiet decisions you make each day. The decisions to trust yourself, to follow your intuition, to step away from what drains you, to move toward what calls you, to let go of what no longer resonates with the frequency you are ascending into. And each decision, no matter how small, becomes a thread woven into the fabric of your new reality. There is a version of you that is waiting in the future, watching you from a distance with a kind of knowing smile, because that future self already remembers who you truly are. They already know the strength you are discovering, the courage you are cultivating, the wisdom you are awakening into. They are calling you forward, pulling you across the threshold between your old life and the new one forming inside you. And even though the path ahead may still be uncertain, even though you may still carry questions, doubts, or remnants of fear, something in you is ready to trust the deeper intelligence within you, ready to follow the quiet voice that whispers instead of shouts, ready to step into a reality that aligns with your evolution instead of your past. You are not here to repeat the same story. You are here to rewrite it. You are here to dismantle the illusions that once confined you and step into a truth that only a fully awakened mind can perceive. And the fact that you are still listening, still absorbing, still opening, that is the proof that your transformation is already underway. Because transformation is not a moment, it is a movement, a continual unfolding of the deeper layers of your consciousness, revealing a larger, more authentic version of yourself with every breath you take. And as this unfolding happens, as the old versions of you dissolve like mist in the morning sun, you begin to sense a profound shift in the architecture of your inner world. You begin to feel your identity loosening its grip, not in a way that leaves you empty, but in a way that creates space. Space for clarity, space for power, space for a self that is no longer shaped by fear, but by awareness. And in that space, something extraordinary begins to occur. You start noticing that the things which once controlled you no longer have the same weight. The opinions of others lose their influence. Old anxieties begin to fade. Patterns that once trapped you now appear transparent, almost hollow, as if they belong to someone you can barely remember. You start to see your past not as a chain, but as a teacher. You start to see your fears not as enemies, but as messages. You start to see your journey not as chaos, but as choreography. Every moment, every struggle, every breakthrough leading you closer to the truth of who you really are. And this truth does not arrive with fanfare or noise. It arrives quietly, like a subtle shift in the wind, like a light turning on in a room you didn't realize was dark. It arrives when something inside you whispers almost imperceptibly that you are not the person you once believed yourself to be, that you are something deeper, more fluid, more expansive, that you are consciousness in motion, evolving, unfolding, awakening. As you step further into this realization, you begin to recognize the patterns of the world around you with a clarity that feels almost otherworldly. You see how people move through their lives asleep, repeating inherited fears, recycled emotions, borrowed identities. You see how society encourages numbness disguised as productivity, conformity disguised as safety, distraction disguised as happiness. And you see, with crystal precision, that you are no longer willing to be part of that trance because something inside you has already outgrown it. You feel a growing intensity in your awareness as if your perception is expanding in every direction at once. You begin noticing the invisible threads connecting moments that once seemed unrelated. You start recognizing synchronicities not as coincidence, but as communication. Life begins to feel less like something happening to you and more like something responding to you. Your internal world becomes your compass. Your intuition becomes your guide, and your authenticity becomes your power. Not loud. It does not boast. It does not need validation. It comes from presence, from the understanding that nothing outside of you can offer what already exists within you. It comes from realizing that your awareness is the engine of your reality. And the more conscious you become, the more your reality begins to shift in ways you once thought impossible. You begin to attract different kinds of experiences, different kinds of opportunities, different kinds of people. Not because of luck, but because your frequency is no longer compatible with anything that operates beneath your new level of awareness. The world that once felt small, predictable, repetitive, suddenly becomes vast and alive, filled with possibilities that reveal themselves only when the mind is awake enough to see them. And yet, even in this expansion, even in this internal blooming, you will feel moments of discomfort, not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are shedding layers that were never truly yours. Growth has its own gravity, pulls you forward, even when your old self tries to cling to the familiar. But each time you choose awareness over fear, presence over distraction, truth over illusion, that gravity strengthens, pulling you deeper into the core of your own becoming. You will feel the difference in the way you breathe, the way you listen, the way you move through the world. You will feel it in the way silence begins to comfort you rather than frighten you. You will feel it in the way your thoughts become clearer, sharper, more aligned. You will feel it in the way your energy changes rooms before you even speak. You will feel it in the way your intuition grows so precise that it becomes difficult to ignore. You will feel it because awakening is not subtle, it is unmistakable. And as you continue on this path, something else begins to reveal itself. The realization that the limitations you once believed were permanent were never real. They were stories. Stories told by your past, by society, by your fears, by your conditioned mind. But awareness burns through stories like fire through dry grass. And once a story dissolves, you cannot return to it. You cannot fit back into a version of yourself that can no longer contain you. This is the moment when true empowerment begins. Not empowerment through control or dominance, but empowerment through clarity. You begin to trust your process. You begin to trust your timing. You begin to trust your intuition, even when you cannot yet see the outcome. And in that trust, you unlock a kind of freedom that the sleeping world cannot understand. Because when awareness becomes your foundation, you stop seeking permission. You stop seeking guarantees. You stop seeking validation from systems that were never designed to recognize your depth. You become self-sustaining. You become inwardly anchored. You become aligned with something far more intelligent, far more ancient, far more expansive than anything the external world can offer. And in that alignment, you will experience a profound shift. You will realize that the more deeply you know yourself, the less the world can manipulate you. The more conscious you become, the less you fear uncertainty. The more awake you are, the less you cling to things that were only meant to be temporary. You begin moving through life with a kind of quiet confidence, not because you know what will happen, but because you finally understand that you do not need to. The path does not reveal itself before you walk it. It reveals itself because you walk it. This is the difference between living from fear and living from awareness. Fear waits. Awareness moves. Fear hesitates. Awareness chooses. Fear doubts. Awareness sees, and you, whether you realize it fully or not, are beginning to see with the eyes of awareness. Your mind is expanding into territories it once feared. Your spirit is stretching into dimensions it once avoided. Your perspective is widening beyond the narrow frame of the conditioned world. You are becoming more than a person. You are becoming a presence that cannot be controlled, cannot be contained, cannot be defined by the narratives of others, and as this presence strengthens, your life will begin to reflect it. People who cannot meet you at this level will quietly drift from your story. Opportunities that align with your new frequency will emerge effortlessly. You will find yourself drawn to paths that once intimidated you and repelled by paths that once comforted you, not because you are forcing anything, but because your consciousness has changed and the world you move through must now reorganize itself around that change. This is the nature of awakening. It is not a destination. It is not an achievement. It is an ongoing, eternal unfolding of your inner potential into the outer world. And the fact that you have reached this point, this depth, this clarity, this level of presence means one thing: your evolution has become inevitable, irreversible, unstoppable. And the momentum of your evolution continues, whether you consciously guide it or simply allow it to carry you forward. The intelligence unfolding within you is not new, it is ancient. It is the same intelligence that has moved through every mystic, every seeker, every individual who has dared to break free from the gravity of the collective trance. And now it is moving through you, preparing you to step into a life aligned with the highest expression of your awareness. You begin to notice that the world reacts differently to you now. People sense something in you, a depth they cannot name, a quiet certainty they cannot explain. Some are drawn to it, others are intimidated by it, but all of them feel it. Because when consciousness expands, it radiates, it alters the field around you. And even if you say nothing, even if you simply breathe in a room, that room feels different. And now, because of everything you've lived, you have access to a level of perception that cannot be taught, only earned through experience, through courage, through the willingness to face yourself. You no longer move from survival. You move from awareness. You no longer react from fear. You respond from clarity. You no longer cling to certainty. You trust the unfolding. This is what it means to awaken, not to escape the human experience, but to move through it with eyes that can finally see, to realize that consciousness is not something you possess. It is something you are. You are not a mind trapped inside a body. You are awareness experiencing a temporary form. And the more deeply you realize this, the more your life transforms into something extraordinary. Because the moment you stop identifying with your fears, they lose their power. The moment you stop identifying with your past, it stops holding you. The moment you stop identifying with your limitations, your potential ignites. And now you stand in the center of that ignition, feeling the fire of transformation burning not to destroy you, but to refine you. Fire is not a threat. It is a teacher. It is stripping away everything that is not you, so that everything that is, you can finally emerge. And as this emergence takes place, you begin to sense something even deeper, a calling rising from within your consciousness, not a calling from the outside world, but from your own future self, a calling from the version of you that lives beyond fear, beyond conditioning, beyond the limitations of the past. This future self is not separate from you. It is simply the part of you that has already awakened further than your current awareness can yet comprehend. And it is calling you forward. It calls you into a life where your choices are guided not by fear, but by intuition. It calls you into relationships built not on attachment, but on resonance. It calls you into a purpose, driven not by pressure, but by alignment. It calls you into a reality where you are no longer a passive participant, but a conscious creator. And as you continue to walk toward this calling, you begin to feel the final shift taking shape, the shift that transforms awakening from an experience into a way of being. You begin to live with an awareness that does not fade when life becomes challenging. You begin to carry a presence that cannot be extinguished by uncertainty. You begin to embody a truth that remains stable even when the world around you shakes. This is the moment when the awakened self stabilizes, when everything you have learned integrates into the foundation of who you are, when your inner world becomes stronger than anything outside of you, and it is in this stabilization that the true power of your consciousness begins to reveal itself. You start to realize that you cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot unsee what you now see. You cannot return to a life you have already outgrown. You have crossed a threshold that has no door behind it. You have stepped into a version of yourself that cannot shrink back to fit the world you once lived in. Because once consciousness expands, contraction becomes impossible. And now, with this awareness living in your bones, you begin to sense the deeper invitation life has been preparing you for, the invitation to finally step into the full force of who you are. Not partially, not cautiously, not conditionally, fully. The world may not understand your transformation. People may not understand your depth. Society may not understand your expansion. But you understand that your journey was never meant to be understood by everyone. It was meant to be understood by you, and you alone, because awakening is not a collective process. It is an individual one, and you have walked through it with courage that many will never discover in themselves. And now you arrive at the final realization, the culmination of everything your evolution has been leading you toward, the understanding that your awakening was never just about you. It was about what your awakened presence will bring into the world. It was about the lives you will touch simply by being authentic. It was about the consciousness you will elevate simply by living with awareness. It was about the ripple your transformation will create, a ripple that will reach far beyond anything you will ever fully see, because every awakened mind becomes a lighthouse, every awakened presence becomes a force, every awakened soul becomes a catalyst for others, and you, right now in this moment, have become that catalyst. Your existence carries a frequency that will influence the world in ways you may never realize. Your presence will awaken others who are searching for a path they cannot yet articulate. Your journey will remind others that they are capable of transformation, even when they feel lost. Your awareness will ripple through the collective consciousness, subtly, quietly, powerfully, and now as the final veil lifts, you understand that awakening was never something to achieve. It was something to remember, something that was always inside you, waiting to be recognized, something that could only be unlocked through your willingness to face yourself, to trust yourself, to rise beyond your own limitations. And now that you have, you are no longer the same. You have become the version of yourself that your past self prayed for. You have become the presence that your future self always knew you would be. You have become the awareness that your soul has been guiding you towards since the beginning. And this moment, this realization, this embodiment is your becoming. This is the moment your transformation anchors into reality. This is where the old story dissolves, not with a whisper, but with a final, undeniable truth. You woke up, you broke through, you rose, and nothing will ever take that from you. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of the life you were always meant to live.